This is the Fit Mess, where together we learn to develop habits that help us live beyond our mental health struggles to create happier, healthier lives.
He's Zach. He lives in the future with his anxiety.
He's Jeremy, and he lives in the past with his depression. And we get together once a week in the present to share the obstacles we face and how we overcome them.
Hey, folks, how you doing? Thanks so much for being there. Thanks for hitting play and spending a few minutes with me at whatever time of day it is that you're listening to this while you're doing whatever it is that you're doing right now. Speaking of mental health, I don't know if you're following what's going on with the presidential election, but I imagine that your mental health is not so good these days. I don't even live in the U.S. anymore, and my mental health is being taxed by what's going on between the debates and the multiple assassination attempts and all the nonsense that seems to just dominate the news headlines every single day whenever we come to this part in the election cycle every 4 years or every 2 years, depending on which race you're following. And before you get nervous, no, I'm not here to campaign for anybody. I'm not here to tell you how to vote. I'm not even here to talk about politics. I'm here to talk about how you're talking about politics with your friends and loved ones and with the random people online that you're probably engaging in pointless Facebook debates with, even though neither one of you are going to change your perspectives. I bring this up as someone who left the U.S. 3 years ago and has zero regrets about it. I love living in Canada. It's a wonderful place. But I still follow what's going on back home because so many of my loved ones live there and have to deal with the outcome of whoever the next president is and the various races. And that trickles down to the rest of the world because of the position that the U.S. holds politically around the globe. But I bring this up also because I was scrolling through Facebook the other day and someone that I know basically posted something about how they're still undecided. They don't know who they're going to vote for, despite all of the evidence that both candidates have put out there for why they're the best person for the job. And it baffles me. I don't know how anyone is undecided. It makes no sense to me why we're even debating between the candidates that are on the stage. But we are. And so how do we do that? Right? How do you convince someone to come over to your side? How do you convince someone who's on the other side to cross over to your side? I don't know that it's your job, but more than likely you're having conversations about this because everybody's talking about this. Most of us are talking within our own circles, our own inner circles, our own echo chambers, having our ideas and thoughts shared back with us as we all shake our heads wondering how can the other side possibly see what they see, believe what they believe, and vote for who they're going to vote for. How do you have those conversations across the aisle? How do you have those conversations with the people in the middle that are undecided, that don't know what to do, that are just torn, perplexed, have no idea who the right person is to vote for? Or anything politically. But right now, that's the big issue that everybody's fired up about. So I don't know. I don't know the answer. I know that, for me, the more that I go into it with a little bit of curiosity, a little bit of compassion, a little bit of openness, willingness to hear and understand their perspective is key. I know that most of us agree on far more than we disagree. And it's, the headlines that trick us into thinking there's this huge division. But for the most part, we all want good jobs. We want to be able to raise our kids safely and not have them murdered just because they went to math that day. We don't want to pay a ridiculous amount of taxes, but the ones that we do pay, we want, the police to show up when they're supposed to and the roads to be paved and, and social services to be what they're supposed to be. But it takes a lot of arguing and debate to find that murky middle that so many of us have our backs to. So how do we have those conversations? How do we go to those loved ones, those people in our family and the friends that we care about and have open conversations about these things without destroying the relationship that is there in the first place? And, I mentioned the person I know on Facebook who posted that they were undecided. I was genuinely curious about how they could possibly be undecided still at this point, just a couple months from the election. And it was a genuine question that I posed. I just wanted to understand, based on what you've seen, how could you possibly still be undecided? I put it much more delicately than that. But I also said, look, for anyone who's going to respond to this, I'm not here to debate. Don't try to change my mind. I'm not going to try and change yours. I'm here purely to understand how can you still be undecided. And, typical Facebook fashion, it started, the debate prompts, the bait started piling up, people trying to engage and try to convince me otherwise, or, make me feel like an idiot for having my point of view, whatever typical nonsense happens on Facebook, to which, I simply did not engage because I said, that's not what I'm here to do. But maybe that was the wrong approach. Maybe I needed to have a more open conversation with those people. But again, how do you do it? What are the rules? What are the ground rules for a conversation like that? Again, I'm not sure what the answer is, so I turned to an expert to try to help us out with this. His name is Philip Blackett. He is the author of Disagree Without Disrespect. We did something a little different this time. Rather than having him come on and engage in a full, 30-minute interview, breaking apart all of the pieces of his argument and his theories, I asked him to just quickly share his framework. What is it that you believe is the shortcut? What is the way that we out here can get along with our neighbors who are in completely different political camps? What can we do to break down those walls? And even if we can't convince our political opponents to see things differently, or even if we can't convince the undecided voter to get off the fence and get on board with us, how can we have those conversations, but then end them with, sharing a beverage? It's still being friends, playing basketball, going to play golf, whatever you're going to do. How do we break down the fear and the walls between us so that even when we disagree, we can still find ways to be friends, be friendly, be cordial, and continue to just live in society? Because we're never all going to agree, but we're all always going to have to share space. So what's the trick? I don't know, but I asked Philip to send us a message to share with you what he believes are the 5 steps you need to be able to disagree without disrespect.
Do you remember the days when we had to be careful when we discussed religion, politics, and money with other people? Today, with so much polarization in our world, we're more hesitant to share a different viewpoint on any issue due to fear of being isolated from our loved ones, condemned or cursed out on social media, or even unfriended. Whether it's dealing with our favorite sports teams, stuff at work, or the next presidential election, we can't be fearful on how we engage with one another when we have different views. Such a fear can mess up with our mental health as men. So I'm on a mission to change that by reintroducing the rules of engagement that we've lost. My name is Philip Blackett, and I'm the author of the book, Disagree Without Disrespect: How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. And I want to help you and your audience, especially us as men, build a necessary communication skill set for living a more fulfilling life while also healing our strained relationships. My hope is that they will be empowered to navigate tough conversations with your significant others, your children, and your colleagues through my simple 5-step framework, where you can disagree with other people and their views and still respect and love that person in a healthy relationship. My mission: let's help men become great communicators again. So here's the 5-step framework to consider. Number 1, separate the idea or belief from the identity of the believer. Number 2, you can dislike the idea or belief and love the believer. Number 3, debate the idea at hand primarily on its merits, meaning no name calling, no over-emotional responses, no silencing or disrupting, no rudeness of that matter. Just focus on the facts, the logic, the data, the merits of the issue at hand. 4, when that debate is finished, show good sportsmanship, just like you did in sports. When you finish the game, win or lose, good game, shake hands. That applies here too, regardless of the outcome of the debate, whether you change sides or the other person change sides or neither of you change sides, right? And number 5, appreciate and love the believer after the debate. Respect his or her views afterwards and open yourself up to further learning. So maybe you can have a conversation afterwards over a bite to eat, or maybe over your favorite drink. Want to learn more, like, hey, let's dig a little bit deeper. I just want to learn more about where your perspective is, and vice versa. Something that's often not done in the times we live in today. So I would love for you and your audience to digest this framework and consider how you can apply it to your conversations, not only with those who agree with you, but more importantly, those who disagree with you. In my short life, I've yet to find anyone who agrees with me 100% of the time on 100% of the things at hand. And I'm sure that's the same with you. No one you know is likely to agree 100% on everything that you have a viewpoint on. And this is why, especially in the times we live in today, we as men should be prepared to properly and respectfully have the tough and candid conversations with the people we love, the people we work with, and those we engage with in the real world. Thank you so much.
All right, that was Philip Blackett. Thank you so much for sending that over for us there, Philip. The name of the book, again, Disagree Without Disrespect. Links to that are in the show notes for this episode. Just kind of going through those step by step a little bit, one by one, separating the idea from the person. Sometimes a lot easier said than done. Step 2, dislike the idea, still love the person. That's what I'm getting at here. Like, there are so many of my neighbors where I live now in Canada where we have very different political ideas, but we're able to hang out, go out to a bar and get dinner, and go out and like just share, going to concerts together. Like, we do fun things together, but politically we're very different. And that's not something that I feel like when I lived in the States was all that easy. Step 3 is a little tricky when you're talking about sticking to the facts, because everyone has different versions of facts these days. So I wish you luck on that one. That one's a little tough, but stick to the facts, the impartial ones, not the one from your left-wing article or your right-wing article, the things that are, generally mutually agreed upon as much as possible. Step 4, I like this. If you are gonna debate, the good old good game, high five, good game on the way out, just to show respect for the person for showing up and sharing their perspective, and step 5, just continue the conversation without it being the conversation. Go get dinner with that person. Go hang out with that person. Go shoot some hoops and talk about their lives. Talk about your life. Like, try to share the perspective that you bring to these arguments, so that people understand that it's not so much about scoring points as much as it's about wanting policies that reflect the kind of country you want to live in. And this is all so hard, because keeping emotion out of something like this, something that's so important. I think it really is. I think it is so important, because I remember when I was young, politics was boring. It was all policy. Everyone basically agreed on the same thing, but they argued over how to pay for it or how much to pay for it. Now we have different versions of reality on the ballot, and how you don't get angry when someone just doesn't see reality as you see it takes a lot of effort and a lot of practice. So be patient, breathe through those debates, try to stay calm. Or there are going to be those folks who you just know you are not going to convince them. There's no way to do it. And that's when you come back to the idea of controlling what's within your control. You don't have to debate with people who you disagree with. You can have conversations, try to keep it mellow, but at least for me, I don't go into those situations trying to win a battle. I go in trying to understand, bringing curiosity about how they see the world, so that I can at least understand why they would cast a vote the way that they would. That's my approach. I don't know if it would help you, but I know that the next couple of months are going to be even harder to have these conversations, and potentially in the months that follow up until January, and then, the cycle starts all over again. I hope this has been helpful. I know it helps me to just talk about these things out loud, to share with you what I'm dealing with. And, again, I'm finding myself scrolling all the social media and reading all about all the updates and checking polls and who's going to win, who's in the lead. How did the last thing affect the poll numbers? It's a lot, man. So maybe the best advice right now is to try to just do less of that too, especially if you've already decided, because unless you're out there knocking on doors and trying to convince people to vote your way, there's not much else that's within your control. So I wish you and your side luck. I hope that the best outcome and the one that I want is the one that we see in November. And we'll leave it there. Again, the links to my guest, Philip Blackett, are in the show notes for this episode. I appreciate you taking some time to spend with me to talk about how to have better conversations, to be able to disagree without disrespect. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back in just a few days with another episode here at thefitmess.com. Thanks for listening.
We know this podcast is amazing and it doesn't seem to lack anything, but we need a legal disclaimer. Prior to implementing anything discussed in this podcast, it is your responsibility to conduct your own research and consult your physician. You should assume that Jeremy and Zach don't know what they're talking about, and they're not liable for any physical or emotional issues that occur directly or indirectly from listening to this podcast.